In 2008, a Catalan man named Enric Duran announced that he had performed a £500,000 heist. But there was no breaking into a vault, no police car chase. He did not hack into the bank's mainframe. There was no zipline. In fact, Enric Duran had not stolen anything. There was no crime. He had taken out 68 commercial loans from 38 banks and passed the money over to social activists and anti-capitalist movements. When he defaulted on the loans, the case was taken to a civil court. On the brink of standing trial, he called on a large swathe of witnesses, leading academics and bank CEOs, who could all testify that the money he had allegedly stolen had never existed in the first place.
An outrageous claim.
Well, no. Those private banks did not have the money to lend him. They had just created a debt out of nothing.
Madness. Banks can't just imagine up money.
Well, actually, yes, they do. In fact, that is how money is created. Private, profit-driven banks have, and very much use, the power to imagine money out of nothing. So Enric called on his witnesses to testify to this, but the court dismissed them all. So Enric dismissed the court and went into hiding.
Meanwhile, local currencies in the UK are gathering momentum. In 2007, the first totness pound was spent, and since then other towns and cities in the UK have followed suit. The idea? To have a currency that cannot leave the local economy, equivalent to sterling in value, and only accepted by local, independent traders. This means that we can support local supply chains and businesses who strengthen the Exeter economy, rather than watching money disappear into tax havens.
I declare the Exeter account officially launched, available for public trading.
On an unassuming Tuesday in September at 11 o'clock in the morning, the Exeter pound went into circulation. In deciding to make a complementary currency, Exeter has taken a step towards democratising the foundation of our exchange system. But it is only the first step, and it begs the question, what are others around the world doing to achieve social justice in the midst of a monetary system that breeds inequality and is very poorly regulated?
Well, I'm here again at RBS because yet again they've done something wrong. If the banks had the same scrutiny over the traders and their own managers as they have over the camera crews standing outside it, where you get a security card coming asking you what you're doing, we might not be in this situation.
Corporate capitalism is failing us. It's inducing ecological decline, affecting social welfare and obliterating local identity and communities. What are some of the models being used by grassroots groups to make the economy a tool for social change, and how can we bring those ideas into being where we live? In June 2015, we travelled to Catalonia in Spain to meet some of the people and projects that are creating a new economy. It's a place with many currencies, cooperatives and community schemes which are working to move Catalonia beyond the oppression of the government and the exploitation of the market. In the Catalan language, there is a word that these people embody.
At an urban garden in the heart of Barcelona, we spoke with Ale Fernandez, a member of the Cooperativa Integral Catalana, or CIC, the solution-focused holistic cooperative. We have all come across cooperatives before, but the CIC takes the cooperative model to a whole new level.
Well, my name's Ali. I was in Transition Bristol. I moved here like 5 years ago, joined Barcelona Transición, and then when the co-op started kind of working and did a big call-out for volunteers, we kind of all joined, and so since then I've been a member of the co-op of the CIC, and we've got our own system of currencies and things, and we're trying to build kind of an alternate system but at the same time, it's all kind of it's inspired from all the stuff that's happening on the ground in each neighborhood.
At Terra Restaurant in Ultramort, which embraces the moneda social, or social money, we talked with Guy James, who introduced us to the workings of the Cooperativa Integral Catalana.
So my name's Guy James. I'm a member of the CIC, the Cooperativa Integral Catalana, which is the cooperative from Catalonia, the open revolutionary cooperative. And I'm also a member of the P2P Foundation, the Society for Peer-to-Peer Alternatives. And I also am in a cooperative called Guerrilla Translation. In Spain there's a very high burden on self-employed people. So you have to pay about 300 euros a month just to be self-employed. It's not linked to earnings. So from a pragmatic point of view, it makes a lot of sense to invoice via a cooperative, and that's really the only way of avoiding this very burdensome fee that self-employed people have to pay. For example, in the UK it's linked to earnings, but here it's just not. But this, in a way, that works in the cooperative's favour, because people who are not ideologically drawn to a cooperative actually end up in the cooperative for purely pragmatic reasons. Now the cooperative vets everyone who joins it to make sure that their project is in accordance with the principles of the co-op, which would be don't harm the environment, you mustn't be working for a multinational or anything which is harmful to other people or the environment. So long as your project is in line with the cooperative principles, then you'll be allowed to join, and you just pay much less per month. They are quite wary of people kind of exploiting the cooperative without being in line with the principles, so that's why they have this sort of vetting of the members, in order to ensure that it is that people don't just join just to avoid paying the state tax.
We joined one of these vetting meetings and listened in on the conversation with two people interested in joining. Firstly, the recruiter, Juanito, explains what it is the CIC are trying to do, what their philosophies are, telling them of the need for a change in paradigm from individualism to collectivism. Organising as a group, he says, means you don't have to face the struggle alone.
One of the potential new cooperators asks if the newly elected mayor of Barcelona, Ada Colau, will help solve the pressing social issues. He suggests that we can use existing power structures to resist. She is a famous social activist, and now that she's in the structure, she could change it.
Juanito thinks differently. The CIC is about acting outside of the current power structures, envisioning a future without them. He says that they need to put energy into making the CIC an alternative structure. Ada Colau won't have enough time in office to do what she wants to do, and there is still an overwhelming majority in government who want to suppress her ideas. He uses the cigarette packets to explain that the system as we know it is so far removed from the system we need that making small changes is futile. Another problem is that, in trying to create a new system, many people abandon lives in the city to go and live in self-sufficient, isolated communities. But going to the mountains is not a sustainable solution, particularly for a densely populated place like Barcelona. The CIC is offering a model for a new way of being while remaining in modern society.
The other potential cooperator tells her story. She wants to start her own business, but cannot because of the expense. She is proud of her grandmother, who worked for herself but had to work in the black market. She wants to have a job and be a productive member of society, but she can't, and she feels guilty.
Cabot explains that the CIC can help her. There are ways of avoiding the self-employment tax and benefiting your local community instead. They have learned methods from corporations and are using them for good. Instead of paying tax, you can declare that you have donated it to a community chest. While this method may not be entirely legal, if enough people do it, then they can make it so. It is called financial disobedience, something we'll come back to in a later chapter.
Coming back from philosophy to practicalities, and the actual day-to-day running of this social organisation, the conversation returns to explaining how the CIC operates. One of the key concepts that guides their work is autogestio. In Catalan this means collective self-organisation. The CIC is made up of a network of assemblies and working groups. They have a headquarters in Barcelona, a few blocks away from Barcelona's unfinished cathedral, the Sagrada Familia. Here they have a public front for members to engage with, called Area Social. Bulk buying schemes, or food baskets, has been a starting point, with assemblies to govern them, so that members are empowered and participation can be encouraged, instead of us all relying on services.
So there's this whole kind of thing about putting it in a box and the service provision mentality where you're trying to give people the simplest thing possible because they're obviously idiots and they can't do it. This place was just done without them. There's no way a government could come and do this because this is governance. This is people doing stuff on their own. So the government couldn't do that and come and do anything for you. It could come and sit in the room with everyone else, I think, with a bit of opposition, but someone from the government could come take part in that. And they would be accepted only as people, not as members of some kind of thing.
With a network of participative assemblies, we begin to collectivise. Assemblies can network with one another. Other groups form with different projects like cooperative housing, a community bank, and legal services.
The problem was that we grew too fast these past 2 years. In the past 2 years we had this idea that somehow we were really big, all these people arrived, we had all this money. And somehow it just seemed to be really kind of expanding and hit the point. But since then I've learned as well through reading Clay Shirky and these people who study participative movements and activist movements, is that there's always like a boom and bust thing at the beginning. At the beginning you always get loads and loads and loads of people joining and love it because it's the best new thing. And those are kind of fair weather friends who will go over, maybe they'll stick around but the number will decline usually. And then you usually find after like a year or so of that that you don't have growth in numbers and you have to stabilize it. So it's not like we don't have growth in numbers. In fact, we've a lot of the time we've slowed down the growth. A lot of people want to join, but our systems aren't built to have long distance communication over emails and assembly stuff when it began as a close network. So somehow we have to be able to maintain this now that we're growing larger. Because we're seeing a lot of this problem. It takes so much longer to organise anything. And any group that starts doing something will find soon enough that another group's done it for them and in another way they don't like or something. And we've got all these problems now that we've got to try and, I don't know, on one side create kind of rules or guidelines so that it all work. And on the other side work on how to make our mutual aid networks and all the other networks, all the informal stuff that we do, to make that work again.
Perhaps the most important mutual aid networks are local economies, communities working together in solidarity rather than being fragmented by the global financial system. This is where the CIC and other new economic movements are focusing on the power of social currencies.
One of the most significant developments has been the evolution of alternative currencies. In Catalonia there are at least 23, working in a variety of ways.
For example, this restaurant we're at now, as I understand it, they source the food that you are served in the restaurant. They actually pay for that in the social currency that people can pay for their meals in the restaurant in the same currency that they're sourcing their food from. So it's a nice circle. It's a nice system whereby there's no imbalance. Basically, they get paid in echos. They spend the money on the food, the raw materials. They turn it into meals that they serve in the restaurant. People pay in echos, and it goes around. That's the ideal situation, really. This is what the CIC is trying to do. It's trying to create a whole ecosystem that's separate from the euro-based, debt-based, interest-based ecosystem, which is gradually failing more and more every year. It's becoming less and less viable as a system, and they're trying to create a much more sustainable system that isn't based on debt, war, petrodollars, etc.
In Barcelona, we met up with Susana, one of the people who put together the economic programme of policies for the Barcelona en Comú party. Ada Colau, the leader of this party, was elected as Barcelona's mayor in May 2015, providing the greatest opportunity so far to have new economic principles recognised in local government.
So my name is Susana Martin Belmonte. I'm an economist and a social currency activist and an activist for the monetary reform. The monetary system there's just one option, and that's what we have, and there's nothing else to think about or to decide about. And actually the monetary system is a political tool. It's 100% political, although nobody chooses the monetary system. Well, in the 15M movement, which I don't know if you've heard about, it's the reaction of the the society against the two main political parties here, who were both looking for ways to impose austerity on the people while they were bailing out banks. The same banks that created the crisis, because actually Spain was in a very good position before the crisis in 2008. Our public debt was very low, and we were performing very well according to their criteria. And suddenly we are all doing everything wrong and living above our possibilities, which is totally unacceptable. I mean, we didn't do nothing. We just were doing what we were allowed to do, because that's what was being financed. What was being financed was a property bubble. And in Barcelona, one of the initiatives has been Barcelona en Comú. And finally we created an economic program. All the program was created collaboratively by more than 5,000 people who participated in the creation of the program. I'm one of them. I'm just working in the economy group on the social currency, and there's actually been a big reaction against this part of the program, probably because it's the most new, well, the establishment has used this excuse to attack Barcelona en Comú, and they have said that this is a very silly initiative, but it's been a very good opportunity for us to actually speak up about the social currency, because it was a very hidden part of the economic program. It was actually a very big economic program with many measures, and it was just one more thing, and now it's like the star point in the program, which we didn't intend to be, but in the end a lot of people is talking about this instead of other things, and we're having the chance to answer to these attacks, to point out that in Switzerland, which is not very anarchist, by the way, they have been there is a social currency working for 80 years now, which is called the VIR, with 60,000 companies, small and medium companies, using it. You can buy almost anything in beers in Switzerland, and nobody knows this. This is what I was saying about the bias of the information they give you about the monetary system in the universities, is because something like this, which is so big, nobody knows about it. And this is very, very, very strange, really strange. There has to be some political reason for that.
In Vilanova i la Geltrú, a town just a few miles south of Barcelona, we talked to the creators of the local currency, the Taruta. This currency is not part of the CIC network, but rather a standalone initiative that was started in 2010 by an association called Eco Living, which is similar to a transition town model.
No, she's saying that we really believe that the new kind of economy you create with this has to be sustainable, ethical, and against, basically.
Claro, no puedes.
Can't play on both sides. Yeah?
Claro.
But you create the Tarutas maintain this balance. How can we do it? By creating projects which would generate money based on time, basically, el temps, no? Justament és molt...
Sí.
Del temps.
Exacte. La turuta...
Our own projects.
Amb una hora de treball, amb un projecte aprovat per la societat...
Bill, a friend of Tom's and user of the Taruta, translated the conversation for us. He told us about the technicalities of the Taruta, explaining that, in order to spend or accept Tarutas, individuals and businesses all have a paper ledger. To perform a transaction, the amount and date is written on your personal ledger, which is then swapped with the business, and you sign the other person's ledger in order to make sure that the transaction is recorded correctly. This is then entered into an online database, and Tarutas are granted to or deducted from your account accordingly. All of the transactions are visible online, so the system is completely transparent. There is a meeting every other month to monitor the running of the Taruta, which anyone can go to. There is an online map showing where you can find goods and services, and the website has an offers and wants page, so people can connect depending on what they want to buy and sell. All of this is done mostly without euros. When first joining the scheme, members are asked to pay 10 euros, which is put into a ring-fenced account, and they are given 10 Tarutas. If they want to leave, this payment is returned to them. Other than that, the Taruta is severed from the euro, functioning as an independent monetary ecosystem. They are, in effect, creating new money. But this is all done legally. No new euros are being generated, so regulators don't get involved. As part of the scheme, there is an assembly 3 times a year where people vote on which community projects should run. Working for an hour on one of these projects, whether it be land cultivation or language tuition, is worth 10 Tarutas. These social projects, run by the Eco-Living Association, enable people not just to earn Tarutas, but to participate in something that will help them learn skills that are often neglected. The aim of the Taruta is very much on the creation of a new, ethical, sustainable economy. But what about inflation? Well, without artificial manipulation of the market, it is unlikely that extreme inflation will be a problem. The Taruta is a very small-scale economy, only used in Vilanova y la Geltrú. Economies like this tend to expand and contract gently.
Esteve is one of the administrators of the Bona Hora, which started in 2011. He proudly shows us the guide which lists all the businesses that accept the local currency and explains how you can earn them. The idea, for them, is to redefine value. Rather than allowing value to be manipulated by the supply and demand of the market, it is based on the true cost of producing something, namely, a person's time. So, for instance, a loaf of bread might cost 10 minutes. In this sense, the Bona Hora is a fusion between a euro-backed local currency and a time bank. He explains that it began as an artisans' market, where makers wanted to establish a solidarity economy.
Back in Barcelona, Susanna tells us about the newly launched Eurocat, a regional, digital platform for businesses to trade amongst one another and supply customers with goods, all whilst using this mutual credit system. The idea is that there is no centralised issuer, as is the idea with all of the local currencies we encountered, but that businesses support each other with zero or low interest credit.
The Eurocat is a project that we started promoting 2 years ago, in which the aim is a little bit to create something similar to the Swiss beer. So what we are aiming is for companies to create their own money, because actually if you think that banks create money and they back it with their solvency, which is based on financial assets, it makes much more sense to create money backed with real assets, which is what small and medium companies have. So it makes much more sense, and it's been proved in the beer that it works. It's like creating a voucher to buy your own goods and services. So I'm producing milk, so I give you a voucher that you can bring it to me and I give you milk whenever you want to buy milk with my voucher. But if you create that for a whole community of producers and commerce and shops, the result is a local currency backed by the production of the local economy. And it's absolutely sound, and it's been proved in Switzerland, as I said, for 80 years already. And well, that's the base of the Eurocard, that you don't really need a bank creating money. You can, I mean, it's not just like that. You have to do it in a sound way, but it can be done. So the people can create the money for the real economy. Yeah, actually, the local currencies and social currencies in general are not only about keeping money in the local economy. For instance, Barcelona doesn't need that. As a big city, is an attractor of money per se. So that's not the only point. The point also is to democratize the power to create money, and also to create a monetary mass that cannot go to tax havens, that cannot be delocalized and put into production in China or something else. It's a local monetary mass that has to be spent locally, aside from the monetary mass that everybody has in pounds or conventional money. So this additional rent that people can have through trade is something that can change completely let's say the utility curves, if you want. So people are going to substitute global goods by local goods, because they have to spend this additional rent they have, this additional income, sorry, not rent. And so they're going to tend to buy local things that are available with this additional currency they have. So naturally, local goods are going to be consumed in the local economy, and global goods are going to be purchased with the global currency.
The currencies in Catalonia come in all sorts of formats. But what about those outside Catalonia? Not all goods can be purchased inside a given local region, so we need to find other ways to transfer value in a global context, whilst maintaining the ethical standards of the new economy.
We've got gift economy, alternate social currencies, so local currencies, then national currencies or agreements between social currencies, and then we've inserted then in that point cryptocurrencies as a way of doing international exchange between co-ops and between groups that do kind of help logistic in different countries. So Kurt, for example, was Zapatistas, who already sell coffee in this way. I mean, how can we do this without exchanging dollars or euros?
Yeah, so cryptocurrencies, you can think of it just as a ledger book of transactions. When you download the wallet, which is just a piece of software, it downloads all the transactions that have been made in that currency ever. So you're downloading the entire ledger of everything that's ever been transacted using that currency. So everybody's got a copy of that ledger, and they've all got to correspond with each other. So it's using the internet as a network to check between all the wallet softwares who have got this ledger to make sure that it's all correct. That's a very simplified version. That's essentially what it's doing. You're basically just downloading a list of transactions, and the your computer is using its CPU power to just check that it's all correct, and nobody's tried to spend the same amount twice. So, I mean, a bank is basically stopping you spending your same €5 twice. I can't buy a beer with it and then try and buy an ice cream with it, because I've already spent it on the beer. Because if the bank wasn't efficient, then I could buy a beer and then quickly buy an ice cream. But the bank says that 5 euros has been spent, you've got 5 euros less in your account, it's gone, your assets have gone down by 5 and your liabilities have gone up by 5. So that's what a bank does, whereas a cryptocurrency does away with a centralized banking system, and it does it in a decentralized peer-to-peer way. So it's just performing the same function of a bank, but without the potential for abuse that banks apparently have become in a position to abuse the system for their own benefit. Which, I mean, I don't know if it's human nature, but it appears that they have decided to do that.
I was a web developer, so been really kind of involved with IT stuff, and was interested in Bitcoin. So in the space we used to run in the deployment of my flat, we had kind of workshops about Bitcoin, and we sold all our stuff as well in Bitcoin, so we could get coffee and beers during our meetings for Bitcoin. So I got involved in that from that point of view, and so at one point they started in the Catalan Cooperative, a group that was kind of a cryptocurrency revision, kind of trying to see what we liked and didn't like about cryptocurrencies. And so all the people who had a bit of experience with Bitcoin went into that. And I guess we all agreed it was a really good thing, and so even if you could understand it and really wanted to be involved in it. And also that it tended to attract these kind of Mad Max style people who just want to make loads of money for themselves and see this way of escaping from all laws, and it's a very kind of just personal wealth gain, profit maximization thing. So we were kind of put off by the whole vibe that there was in the community. And so we came up with some kind of guidelines to what we thought were improvements to them. And for a while we were going around with this German currency that was a cryptocurrency that was Faircoin. And then a few months later, Faircoin came up as an alternative to that. It seemed to be much more along the way of what we want to do.
There's a kind of Wild West side to it, which comes from it being, you could say, too decentralized. So the difference between Bitcoin and Faircoin would be that Bitcoin is, as I understand it, more of a right-wing libertarian project where it's basically every person for themselves. Self-interest is maximized, and you're free from, it's libertarian in the sense that you're free from the state, the government, this kind of thing. But it's a little bit kind of Wild West, as I say, that it's you know, like the Silk Road thing. That's probably, people will have heard of that, of people buying drugs and this kind of thing, because it's totally unregulated. So if you get away from regulation, there's obviously a dark side. Bitcoin is said to be a trustless system, whereas Faircoin's intending to replace the trust that we have in the banking system with trust in each other, you know, in a more peer-to-peer way. So we're rejecting the kind of lawless, every man for himself philosophy of Bitcoin, as I would characterize it, and we're trying to reintroduce the trust, but not trust in a centralized hierarchical system, but trust in people that we know, a peer-to-peer trust. Even if we don't know people personally, we trust. It's like a web of trust. So you've got a local network, and everyone's trusted in that local network. So I trust your whole network.
So I was on that group, and it was kind of more from a theoretical point of view. We were thinking of how we could devise a currency that was less anarcho-capitalist and more kind of community managed or run by more than one person. So the new Faircoin is able to be run by two people who could be the leaders or the coordinators of a group. So it's not one person's single decision to buy or sell with a wallet containing this currency, but it becomes a group decision. So we're trying to edge it towards something a bit more kind of cooperative. So right now we're working on proof of cooperation as a kind of algorithm to replace the Bitcoin algorithms, which are about mining. So it's about how much kit you can buy and stuff, how many co-computers you have that can kind of create Bitcoins really quickly. Faircoin tries to solve those problems of creating a cryptocurrency is kind of ethically positive, and also a system for this kind of international network to form.
Well, Fair Co-op as an entity holds a majority of fair coins. So, in a way, it's much more well. It's centralised in a different way to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is centralised because of mining pools. That's a whole other question. But if people think that Bitcoin is not centralised at all, they are mistaken, because mining pools just are groups of very powerful computers. People who own powerful computers have got together to mine the majority of Bitcoins. So that is centralised in that way. Faircoin at the moment is centralised in that the Fair Co-op holds, I'm not sure if it would be 50%, but it holds a large percentage of the fair coins that exist. On the other hand, Fair Co-op is an open cooperative, so basically anybody can join and have a say in how those coins are managed. So even though one entity is apparently in charge of a large proportion of the coins, making it centralised, that entity itself is a decentralised entity. So it's kind of paradoxical. And Enrique, as the founder of Fair Co-op, is apparently buying and selling fair coins rather than to pump up the value, as people have been doing with Bitcoin, to try and make a personal profit. He's trying to manipulate the currency to make it a stable store of value because that's really the holy grail of cryptocurrencies, is for it not to be volatile. So people can say, I'm going to buy X number of fair coins, and in a year's time it's going to be worth, well, hopefully slightly more. It might be very slightly less, but it's not going to be worth an enormous amount different than it is worth at the moment. So it's not going to be massively volatile. I'm not going to buy a fair coin. I'm not going to buy 100 euros worth of fair coins and it's going to be worth 10 cents in a year's time, and neither is it going to be worth 100,000 euros, which is obviously it's a barrier to speculation. So if you want people to speculate, you want it to be volatile in an upward sense, but it's impossible for it to be volatile upwardly without it also being in a sort of boom and bust cycle and crashing all the time. So really, a sustainable cryptocurrency should have a measure of stability over a long period of time, and this is what the Fair Co-op, which, you know, in its early stages, it's more or less Enrique is controlling a large proportion of the fair coins that are in existence in order to keep it stable and to not allow the value to rise or fall too much.
While still in hiding from being the Robin Hood of banks, Enrique Duran is attempting to stabilise Faircoin as a global currency for the new economy. Bringing the new economy into being can often lead people into legal and illegal grey areas.
Other methods of transition use the concept of civil disobedience. Acts of civil disobedience actively and non-violently misuse current laws and systems which obstruct social justice, to the benefit of citizens and communities. They can range from refusing to allow your tax to be used on handouts for private banks, through to occupying derelict urban areas to create spaces to fulfill the needs of the local community.
So this space here is a urban garden. It's got a long history, maybe like 10 years of being a squat, but during that time it was knocked down and kind of abandoned and lay in ruins, and then re-squatted again as a garden. And then it's been through lots of different kind of shifts in terms of different groups coming and taking over. At one point there were loads of tiny children here all the time because a school teacher close by started bringing her class here. So all the kids would play here during the day and they'd have hours when they'd come here. You can't get in because there's bars, but I'll show you the government run one, where you have to be an OAP to get in. They have this thing about if you want to have a garden, you must be above a certain age, because why would you want to have a garden if you're a kid and then go out and have a life? So yeah, I think the best thing the government can do now, especially that our local kind of administration is kind of run by activists, is they can help these things to have a kind of security. What we need is security. We can't build anything if we don't know that we're going to be here in 4 years or 3 years. And sometimes the fear is that if you build stuff, they're going to come and chuck it out, because it's really a good way to defuse any citizen spirit, is to evict the nicest places and places with been working. So that, I don't know, there's this whole play on people's energy to try and make sure that people just kind of stay depressed and don't do anything. Well, I'm in the housing department of the co-op, and so we give advice to people who want to form groups and want to access land or access a space, and try and tell people the different models they can follow or the different ones they can use. So one of the models that we try and tell people about is that instead of squatting, when you find an empty property, I mean, there's a whole process you can follow for squatting in different ways. I mean, and so many different philosophies around it, but this is different. I mean, we're going to empty spaces and examining them and looking at them to try and find the owner so we can talk to them. And an example is my friend who is in the housing committee with me as well. He went to an old vineyard in his village, and he'd seen it abandoned. It's the most beautiful one in the whole village, and he said, "So why is this place empty?" And obviously it's because the two brothers who owned it are in a fight and they're in a quarrel with each other. So he just said, "Well, can I maintain it while you solve your problems?" And so now he's got the best vineyard in the village. So this is the same thing we did with our co-op on a bigger level slightly, is that we got together with this with some lawyers who had a lot of cases of people who were kind of about to lose their houses. So they were dealing with these cases, and they sent an email or a communication around all their clients to say who would like to sign up your house as a social housing project to a cooperative. And so that gets around all the laws. And even if they're about to have their house taken off them and have it sent to, it's called auction, then you can still rent it at the last minute, even, because he rented it to us 2 days before. We signed a 5-year contract for a social housing contract. So it's within social housing parameters that we worked out when we formed our social housing co-op as a legal entity. So because we've got all that behind us, and because we actually went and lived in it, when the bank took us to court a few months later to say that is a sham contract, it's not real, we all showed all our correspondence that we'd arrived, all our bills we paid, all the stuff that showed that we were living there. And a few of us went to the court case as well, just to show, yeah, we're real people. And so the bank couldn't do anything, because we're actually living there. It's not a weird thing, it's an actual social housing contract. We're able to create this whole kind of oasis of community life with an assembly and our own management, collective services, and kind of ways to work together and ways to do more than just live.
Enrique Duran's act of financial disobedience showed the Catalans the truth about money creation.
Not paying a loan back to the bank is not such a big crime. We have a lot of people who is not able to do it. Enrique Duran has done it for political reasons, to bring the attention on the how unfair the monetary and financial system is, because everything we're talking about now is totally new to most of the population. It's not totally new to everyone, but it was almost totally new to everybody. Everybody you could talk about with. Nobody knew how money was created. There's been a huge campaign with Positive Money in the UK and other grassroots organizations, and Enrique has decided at the time to go for this way of making his case, and is a very courageous initiative. He's risking a lot. I would have never done this, and I can say that the point he was making, I totally agree, and it's true that there is a need for people to know this.
From what I understand, Enrique's action of expropriating money from banks was actually a separate thing to the foundation of the CIC. It was all inspired by the same principles, but Enrique actually expropriated the money from the banks and put it into other projects. His Info Espy project, which has produced the newspapers which actually announced his action to the public, made it public through those newspapers, and they've made films and things like that. So that was kind of like that itself was the inspiration behind the CIC. But as I understand it, they didn't actually use any of the money from Enrique's action to start the CIC. It was like a parallel thing.
This is an act of disobedience which it is unlikely many will be keen to follow. But there are many other acts of financial disobedience you can perform to help make your money more ethical.
While we were in Barcelona, we went to the reverse bailout office, an information point posing as an art installation. The artists use an art grant to set up an offshore company in a tax haven and offers the public information on how big companies abuse this global loophole to avoid anywhere near a fair contribution. But more than that, Sophia took us to her office and explained how we could use these powers for good with clear how-to guides on being financially disobedient. The Reverse Bailout Office provides citizens advice from dodging VAT to tactically declaring insolvency, geared towards giving us the same playing field as big businesses and banks. One of the simplest acts of financial disobedience is the refusal to pay the unethical part of your tax. First, take the amount spent on nuclear weapons, private bank bailouts and so on, and deduct that from the total you would pay the tax office. Then donate the remaining amount to a community chest. Send the letter they have drafted for you explaining this act, along with proof of this donation to the tax office, and your act of financial disobedience is complete. However, she explains, this will only work if a lot of people do it together. And so we come to the question, how can we collectivise? What can we take from autogestio? To mobilise ourselves locally and globally, but beyond the state and the market as we know them.
Is there a way to share integral cooperative models, replacing national currencies with local social currencies and global cryptocurrencies, and being a little civilly disobedient for the common good? The CIC is reaching out.
Fair Co-op is an attempt to scale up the CIC model to a global level. So the CIC model is a cooperative, but it's based in a specific region, the northern part of the Spanish state, as they would say, called Catalonia in English. So it's completely tied to that area, and it's been the inspiration for other open integral cooperatives. Integral meaning that it's concerned with every aspect of life in terms of education, health, financial services, this kind of thing. It's an attempt to get away from the nation state and the domination that has ultimately become in the service of corporations, and to actually create public services that are for the benefit of human beings rather than the benefit of numbers on a balance sheet or essentially big banks and corporations. So the CIC is an attempt in a specific region of the world to keep value within a community of values and a community of resistance, a post-capitalist community. And the Fair Co-op is an attempt to scale that up globally. So it works in two ways, is that you have your local nodes of the Fair Co-op, which would be the equivalent of the CIC. So the CIC can be a local node of the Fair Co-op, and let's say an integral cooperative in France or South Africa or Japan or wherever it could also be an already existing entity, and also be a node of the Fair Co-op. And the Fair Co-op is also a social network along the lines of Facebook or any well-known social network. But rather than just sharing information, it's a decision-making platform. The idea is that it has councils which manage the funds of the Fair Co-op. So Fair Co-op uses one of the tools of Fair Co-op is the Fair Coin.
The CIC is unique to Catalonia. So what might a Devon or a Southwest integral cooperative look like? How are we different?
I think people in Britain have been brought up with the idea of the British Empire as being a good thing, and of being a certain notion of order, which maybe in other countries that have been through a kind of fascist era like Italy or Germany, is that they've got a kind of, in a way they're kind of immunised to the idea of too much order, whereas I think in Britain there's this kind of, like, from my perspective, too much respect for a kind of abstract idea of order. And if somebody just looks, if somebody fulfills like the kind of what they appear to be respectable, then there's a kind of a reflexive kind of trust in them which they probably don't deserve. And so there isn't the culture of resistance that there is in Catalonia in the UK. But it's not to say that it's completely absent, it's just not the same, because you've got a long history of unionising, worker solidarity. The NHS was one of the first public health systems, so it's maybe just different rather than non-existent, but it's certainly not the same here. People are much more anti-authoritarian just by instinct here than you would get in the UK, I think.
In Catalonia, the UK, and countless other places around the world, the new economy is beginning to emerge. It strikes us that the most important thing is solidarity. We must share stories, methods and solutions with each other, those which facilitate the creation of a fairer world for everyone.
The idea behind this film was not to illustrate just how corrupt the banks are, just how much of the world's wealth is held by the 1%. Most of us are aware of that. Now is not the time for dwelling on what is wrong, but for putting new strategies in place to make a new system which renders the old system redundant. So, we hope to see you all in the next chapters as we create the fair economy.
Temprano y me pongo a trabajar.